Welcome to part 19 of my Western Roman Empire campaign. Victorius dies at the age of 97 years, leaving the empire in a state of crisis. His reign was marked by reforms, revolts, and the spread of a new religion, Octavianism. Due to a catastrophic administration error, the empire is now broken into 3 parts. And so welcome to Crusader Kings 3, The Fallen Eagle. Due to the new inheritance rule, the empire had broken into 3 parts after the death of Victorius. A new Britannic Empire and the Persian Empire had formed under the leadership of Titus' brothers and were now acting independently of each other. This was a disaster for the empire, and if nothing changed, this event could be repeated countless times. Fortunately, there was a competent official who immediately proposed a solution to normalize the law of succession. Titus, however, rejected this proposal because he believed that this new law was wanted by the gods and ensured that the emperors should choose their successors more carefully. Titus now had the task of removing the chaos his father had caused. Since he was a good diplomat, it was easy for me to influence my vassals, and the empire was politically stable for the time being. But there was no time to rest, for the empire was at war with the Persian nation of Dylam, which had gained fame in the empire through its victory against Aurelius II. But Titus could not bear any defeat, so he mercilessly razed one city after another to the ground. He then turned his attention to the new British Empire, which was ruled by his younger brother Nicholas. Fortunately, he was only 8 years old, so one murder would be enough to bring the empire titles back into Titus' control. After the second attempt, the murder of Nicholas was successful, and Britain was now part of the Roman Empire again. Yes. Perfect. Really good. But with the reconquest, the empire was now at war with 3 factions who had made war on Britain. But worse was to come, because only a little later there was a peasant uprising which took place mainly in Spain. But since my armies had already been raised in other border areas, Titus, like Victorius before him, had to resort on mercenaries to defend the empire. Slowly but surely, Titus was able to win the defensive wars. Only the peasant uprising did not look good. But in the end, this could be ended with the death of the enemy leader. But all these wars and uprisings slowly showed their effect. The wealth of the empire sank dramatically, and so Titus only had 71,000 gold left. But at the times of Victorius, about 30 years ago, the empire still had almost 300,000 gold. But Titus could not and did not want a great financial recovery, because the next task was to reconquer Persia. Fortunately, the Persian Empire had not yet been able to accumulate great wealth, and the army wasn't exactly scary either. Before I do anything else, where's their capital? Down here? What? Why would you... never mind. Okay. I divided my army to make faster progress, because the only thing that could really bother me was the length of the war and the cost that it would entail. But it was not to remain just one war, because once again a peasant uprising broke out. While the conquest of Persia made great progress, it was once again the peasant uprising that caused me problems. Without mercenaries, the empire would have fallen long ago. Eventually, I won the war against the Persian Empire, and the territories that had once been conquered by Octavius were once again in Roman opposition. And after a final battle, the peasant uprising was also defeated. But the empire had not yet regained its full size, because in Africa another empire title was controlled by Titus' brother Ulfin. But first, the last kingdom in Lower East Africa was subjugated, as this people kept invading Roman provinces. Now Titus only had to conquer the empire of Libya, and he would have restored the whole empire. But shortly after the declaration of war against Libya, Titus died. and was never able to finish his conquest. Despite his successes, he was not the most popular emperor, and money management was not one of his strong points. Nevertheless, it was clear to everyone that he had almost managed to end the crisis of the 7th and 8th century. But the task now passed to his son Titus II. Titus II put a lot of emphasis on the administration of the empire, but he was also able to win the war against Libya, and thus end the crisis of the 7th and 8th century. In addition, new laws were enacted which forbade the granting of land or titles to cultures that were not Roman. In addition, he ensured the construction of many buildings in the empire and took great care of the future emperors. And so peace returned to the empire.